1470 BC, at the temple of the goddess Mut in Thebes. Hundreds of revelers are gathering for one of the most anticipated festivals of the year. But this will be no pleasant family cookout. On this day, Egyptians of all stripes will come together for the ancient equivalent of Woodstock, complete with sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
The Egyptians had a festival, which they called the Festival of Drunkenness. And in this festival, there was a whole process of getting intoxicated that led you closer to God.
The festival began really by the passing out cups of beer, and this went on for hours. The idea was to drink steadily and continuously until most people actually passed out.
En route from a light buzz to a blackout, this ancient throng of binge drinkers would throw caution to the wind.
We know for sure the festival included sexuality. There was almost pride in both the drinking and the sexual activity that was a result of it.
What would compel normally pious and orderly Egyptians to so shamelessly shed their inhibitions? The festival, it seems, had divine intentions.
You drank the beer, you lost your senses, and you moved into another altered state of being where you could converse with the gods.
They went right to the very limit of almost chaos, hoping that the good effect of it would balance out the fact that they were doing stuff that they wouldn't in any other time in their life.
Egyptologist Betsy Bryan and her team of archaeologists are currently excavating the Temple of Mut, located in present-day Luxor. Her recent discovery of several inscribed columns never before seen on television reveals new clues about the annual festival of drunkenness and the motivation behind it.
This one is actually the very first column that we found that mentions this festival of drunkenness. The top half begins with the name of the queen, and then she made it as a monument for her mother Mut. It says, making for her a porch. I haven't actually found this particular hieroglyph elsewhere. A porch of drunkenness. Now, the word for drunkenness in Egyptian is tek, and it's written with a T, the het, and then, of course, determined with a beer jar.
These long-lost hieroglyphs reveal that on this very spot, more than 3,000 years ago, a so-called porch of drunkenness was constructed as the center stage for the festival. It was from this focal point that the pharaoh presided over the debauchery. And in the heyday of the festival, that pharaoh was the most powerful female in Egyptian history, Hatshepsut. She was no run-of-the-mill ruler. She would lead Egypt through one of its most successful eras and rekindle the ancient tradition of the festival of drunkenness, which had disappeared during previous pharaohs' reigns.
Clearly, Hatshepsut thought that the festival was very important. It was important enough that she wanted to redo it in a very big way.
The festival was a rare public display of alcoholic excess, but while state-sponsored keg parties were few and far between in ancient Egypt, beer and wine were widely accepted staples of daily life.
People would drink all the time. In fact, it was probably more common to drink beer than it was to drink water. And a lot of Egyptians were paid in beer and bread.
So it wasn't the presence of alcohol that made the festival of drunkenness so special, but the license to abuse it in public.
There are texts where people are told that drunkenness is a bad thing, and too much alcohol, in particular the stupid behavior that might result, is not a feature of proper behavior.
But before the revelers slipped into their inebriated slumber, they would seek to satisfy their most lascivious urges.
At some point, people must have been drifting off, and not only drifting off to sleep, but also drifting off in pairs.
Normal social rules get turned upside down during festivals, and this is something we know from Mardi Gras. Carnival time brings different activity. So during the Festival of Drunkenness, the acts going on are an orgy by any description.
The notion of rampant sexcapades taking place at these ancient throwdowns is more than speculation.
It's explicitly said that part of the ritual is to drink and then to have sex. There's a phrase that occurs in all of the texts, to travel through the marshes. It's definitely a euphemism for having sex.
Appearances notwithstanding, the festival of drunkenness was more than a frat party. It was an important religious ceremony that sought to placate a fiery goddess named Mut.
This is the entranceway into the Temple of Mut, and there's a hymn here on the wall that greeted people as they arrived, and it's really about the sort of scariness of this goddess Mut. Every line here starts the same way, with fear of Mut is in every land, and then it becomes a litany. You say it over and over and over again, and then the desire is to transform her into something other than this fearful goddess.
According to the Egyptian myth, the sun god Ra sent his daughter Mut to destroy humankind, but then had a last-minute change of heart. So he had to come up with an elaborate way to trick his daughter into not slaughtering the people of Egypt.
He commissions the brewing of thousands of jugs of beer. The beer is combined with the red ochre to look like human blood. And when the goddess comes to slay mankind, she begins to drink what she thinks is human blood and gets ragingly drunk, is no longer upset or ready to kill mankind, and mankind is saved.
Revelers at the Festival of Drunkenness sought to reenact Mut's memorable binge and come face to face with the goddess in the haze of their brutal morning hangover.
The musicians actually drum the people awake, and at that moment, they are then able to experience her, that is, see her and she see them. And that's that moment of epiphany, of real connection that takes place.
With Mut pacified and humanity saved, the glassy-eyed Egyptian revelers were free to nurse their headaches and return to their daily lives, at least until the next year, when the porcelain goddess would come calling once